Ready? At this time, I call the June 5th, 2025 meeting of the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission to order. This meeting is being streamed live for the public to attend and recorded as a public record. Recording of the meeting will be available at www.ncwildlife.gov. At this time, I recognize Commissioner Will Seegers to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. All stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, for the invocation, I recognize Commissioner John Alexander. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please pray with me. Dear Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for this day and for the beauty of this world that you share with us. We thank you for new wildlife in your world and enjoy seeing young legs and young wings grow stronger. We also want to thank you for the staff of our Wildlife Resources Commission that continue to serve and protect our wildlife, particularly Doug Howell and Mike Johnson, two men who use their life to support your wildlife. It is in your holy name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. This time, I'd like to recognize Margot Mingler, do a roll call of commissioners present to determine the quorum.
Good morning. Going to do a roll call of commissioners present for our June 5th, 2025 meeting. Chairman Monty Crump.
Here.
Vice Chairman Mark Craig.
Here.
David Boyle. John Coley.
Here.
Wes Seegers.
Here.
Tommy Fumble.
Here.
Tom Berry.
Here.
Brad Stanback.
Here.
Jim Ruffin.
Here.
Ray Clifton.
Here.
Kelly Davis. Here. Steve Wyndham.
Here.
Landon Zimmer.
Here.
John Stone.
Here.
Hayden Rogers. John Alexander.
Here.
Tom Hayslip.
Here.
J.C. Cole.
Yeah.
Mike Alford. Joe Budd. Reed Smith.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Margot. North Carolina General Statute 138A-15 mandates that the commission chair shall remind all commissioners of their duty to avoid conflicts of interest and appearances of conflict under this chapter. And that the chair also inquires as to whether there is any known conflict of interest or an appearance of a conflict with respect to any matters coming before the commission at this time. It is the duty of each commissioner who is aware of such personal conflict of interest or of an appearance of a conflict to notify the chair of the same. And I'll ask at this time, are there any recusals or notices of recusal on any item coming before the meeting, business meeting? Here none, we'll move forward. You've all been previously given this Exhibit A, your packet, commission meeting from April 17th, 2025. Are there any motions? Is there are any additions or corrections to those minute meetings? Here none, I'll entertain a motion. To approve minutes. A motion. Ruffin, Seegers. Any further questions? Here none, all those in favor of the adoption of the minute meetings of April 17th meeting signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Meetings are adopted. At this time, I'd recognize Jason Cottle, Finance Officer, to give us financial status report and update.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. This will be a brief recap. All right, here we go. Brief recap of the data that was presented yesterday at the Finance Audit and Compliance Committee. This is our financial status as of April 30th. In our general fund, total revenues year to date, $140,268,154.60. Total expenditures in the same of $148,175,879.85. Excuse me, leaving us a fund balance as of April 30th of $20,835,145.11. In our capital improvement fund, total revenues as of April 30 were $8,297,513.43. Total expenditures in the same were $7,337,016.49. Leaving us with a fund balance of $5,650,049.46. Moving on to our endowment fund, overall balance as of April 30th was $205,439,318.67. Of that total, just over $33,000 held in our short-term investment fund, making up a little over 16% of the total allocation. and the remaining almost 172 million in our equity investment fund, making up not quite 84% of the total allocation. And of that balance stated, the amount that remains expendable to the agency is just over 72 million. And again, once we factor out our known obligations, including debt service, the Setzer renovation, and other identified projects for the next 3 years, we've got just over 39 million remaining in expendable investment income. Any questions about any of this data?
Does anyone have any report is presented?
Then that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
This time we'll move forward with committee meeting reports. Our first committee report open today is Habitat Non-Game Endangered Species. Kelly Davis.
Habitat Non-Game Endangered Species Committee met on June 4th, 2025 at 9 a.m. Casey Cook started the meeting by providing a presentation on the Eastern Black Rail in North Carolina. She provided background information on the rail, its distribution and abundance, threats, its spacing, and conservation actions to increase its population size and distribution. Dr. Sarah Schweitzer followed with a summary of the Black Rail Conservation Plan. After a brief discussion, the committee voted to approve releasing the plan for a 30-day public comment period. Next, Dr. Schweitzer presented the nominations for Non-Game Wildlife Advisory Committee membership. The committee endorsed the staff recommendation, which will be presented in Exhibit C later during this meeting. An update on the 2025 Thomas L. Quay Wildlife Diversity Awards cycle was provided by Shannon Deaton. The request for nominations has been reposted through June 27th. Shannon also provided an update on the 2025 draft State Wildlife Action Plan's 10-year revision. Public comments can be submitted through the agency website until July 5th, and committee members are also invited to review. A commission endorsement of the plan will be requested before the plan is submitted to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for final approval. Next, Shannon provided a summary of staff's excellent work to assist agencies and municipalities engaged in debris removal efforts in western rivers and streams post-Hurricane Helene. In response to requests from partners and the public, staff developed a one-page fact sheet of best management practices and maps of high-quality habitat stream reaches in each impacted county. The committee then received a presentation by Rachel Hope on 6 aquatic species that were recommended for state reviewed by NWAC's Scientific Council. Staff will use the North Carolina Status Assessment Tool to evaluate these species, and proposed listing statuses will be presented to the committee in early 2026. Last, Brina Jones provided a presentation on the robust red horse in the Yadkin Petey River and the conservation work staff and partners have been conducting to monitor and increase population resiliency. There being no further business, the committee was adjourned at 10:23 a.m. Concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Are there any comments or questions of the report? Habitat Non-Game Endangered Species Committee yesterday. Hearing none, at this time we'll move forward. Small Game and Wild Turkey Committee. Commissioner Rutherford.
Chairman Crump. Small Game Wild Turkey Committee met on Wednesday, June the 4th. Wildlife Chief Brad Howard opened the meeting by notifying the committee that the annual Lawrence Dietrich Small Game Award nomination window is now open and will close July 9th. Staff will share nominations with the committee via email shortly thereafter. Presentations began with upland game bird biologist Anna Plumpton giving a quick summary of the 2025 turkey harvest. The turkey harvest was the 4th highest on record. Trends across the state remain steady. Next, Assistant Chief Chris Cray updated the committee on fox squirrels. Fox squirrel populations appear to be steady and range expansion continues statewide. Some questions exist, however, regarding the Sandhills game land and hunting pressure on fox squirrels. Staff recommended introducing a point of sale permit for fox squirrel hunting on Sandhills game land to gather additional data on hunting pressure, and this will be included in the game land rules package. Next, LAWA Chief Darren Barnes updated the committee on the progress in habitat development Caswell Small Game Focal Area. Timber thinning and prescribed burning continuous plan, and the early successional habitat is developing well. Finally, the committee discussed the ongoing effort of the Quail Restoration Working Group and the potential next steps. After lively discussion, the meeting was adjourned.
Are there any questions? Small Game, Wild Turkey Committee presentation. Hearing none. Move forward now with the Finance Audit and Compliance Committee. Chairman Zimmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, we start with the internal audit. Internal Audit Director Elizabeth Davis presented the 2025 updated WRC internal audit charter to the committee. Key updates to the charter were discussed and the committee voted to approve the charter. Next, the results of the annual risk assessment were presented and noted to have informed the development of fiscal year 2026 audit plan, and the plan was subsequently presented and the committee voted to approve the plan. An updated was then given on current engagements and administrative operations. Next, with finance, CFO Jason Cottle presented an overview of year-to-date revenues and expenditures in both our general and capital improvement funds as compared to the prior fiscal year. An update was provided as to the current value and asset allocation of the agency's endowment fund, as well as the current availability of expendable investment income. There being no further business, the meeting was adjourned, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are there any comments or questions? Regarding the Finance Audit Compliance Committee reports? Hearing none. This time we'll move forward to Education and Communications Committee. Tom Hasty.
Mr. Chairman, Education and Communication Committee met on Wednesday, June 4, 2025 at 1:30. Staff presented an update on Becoming an Outdoors Woman program, outlining the team's effort to evaluate and rebuild the program to ensure it aligns with the Commission's mission. Moving forward, the program will be called Outdoor Skills Academy, and its first event took place this week in Avery County. Several additional classes were scheduled for this summer, culminating in a major weekend event planned for the fall. The committee also received a presentation on the evaluation of the John Pegman Fishing Center and plans for the future. In the fall, staff gathered information from agency staff, volunteers, and past class participants to improve programming and expand outreach in the community. Staff recommends expanding the scope of course offerings, developing an integrated volunteer strategy, and marketing programs locally to meet public needs. Both evaluations presented further the goals identified in the division's program action plans, which the team has recently developed with input from the entire agency. The meeting concluded with a presentation on the agency's youth shooting sports offerings, including National Archery in the Schools program and the Youth Hunter Skills Tournament. More than 25,000 students participated in these combined programs in 2024. Some past participants in these shooting sport programs have received scholarships and even gone on to work with the agency. The true success is evident in the smiles of students' faces as they interact with the agency. This concludes my.
Thank you, Commissioner Hasty. Are there any comments or questions? Education and Communication Committee report. Hearing none, I'll give it for the committee to hold. Committee to hold meeting yesterday afternoon and began presentations related to the 2026-27 annual rulemaking cycle. Corey Oakley presented proposed inland fishery rules, followed by Darren Barnes with proposed changes to land and water access rules, and Brad Howard with proposed changes to wildlife management rules. Brad Howard also presented proposed changes to wildlife captivity and rehabilitation rules under section 10H.1400. Next, Will Casola reviewed public comments received and presented temporary rulemaking for sea trout 10C dot 0325 at Pisgah Game Land 10D dot 0260. Corey Oakley then provided a brief update on flounder. The committee then moved into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318 11A3 to discuss ongoing litigation. Being no further business, committee return to open session and adjourn. Are there any comments or questions of the committee of the whole report? Hearing none, we'll move forward with the agenda. And this time I recognize Darren Barnes, our Land and Water Access Chief, to introduce the speaker and our agency spotlight.
Chairman, today I would like to introduce a couple of our staff on the field. First off, Casey Phillips, who's our forestry program leader. He's going to talk to us today about our prescribed bird program. And I'd also like to Travis Hewitt and Matt O'Connell, who are sitting over here on the side. Travis is our drone operator for our drone that we have here displayed for you. This is one of our fire conditioned drones, and I'll say any more about it. I'll let him talk about it. But they'll be here afterwards too if you have any questions about the drone that we have out here. Okay.
Thank you, Darren. I always appreciate the opportunity to come up here and highlight great work that's being done out in the field on our game lands across the state. And I'm really particularly excited today to talk about our prescribed burning program because it's something that means a lot to me. It's one of the reasons I got into land management and wanted to work for this agency a long time ago. And today I'm going to talk about how the burning program's grown over the last 25 years and what we're doing to keep it moving forward. I want to talk to you about a lot of things today, but first I want to start with a little bit of context on the fire and forestry program as a whole. Our foresters are our primary burners on each of their work areas, and they oversee the burning program on those game lands. But they're also responsible for the forest management on those same game lands, meaning they conduct all the timber sales and the planning and execution of those sales. We have about 130,000 acres in active management where we're able to conduct commercial timber sales. And there's usually about 40 active sales going on across the state at any given time. Those foresters are also responsible for the reforestation that follows those timber sales and any mid-rotational treatments that are in those stands as well. I think it's important to mention here also that those commercial timber sales typically generate between $4 and $8 million annually for the agency. So when they're not selling timber, they're focused on burning parts of the 190,000 acres of prescribed burn units that we have statewide. And at our current staff capacity, we're hitting about 30,000 acres every year. Now that involves preparing hundreds of miles of fire breaks, coordinating burning crews, and a lot of other resources. It's a lot of work. So if it's so much work, then why do we do it? Right. Well, I don't think it's any big secret in this room and in this building that fire improves the habitat for the species that we're trying to manage for. Prescribed burning absolutely has the highest return in habitat for the dollars that we invest in that application, which is why we basically use it on every game lands from the mountains to the coast. So here's what we've been doing for the last 25 years. And these numbers are probably a little hard to see. So we burned a little less than 15,000 acres in the year 2000 on the far left. We topped out in 2017 at 38,000 acres, and we're projecting about 32,000 acres to finish up the end of this year. The average over the last 5 years is still hanging right around that 30 to 31,000. So we've actually doubled the acreage that we treat every year since 2000. There's some interesting variations in this overall trend that actually line up pretty well with some weather events like droughts, major land acquisitions, or stuff completely out of our control like COVID-19. We can't control the weather, but we can add resources when and where it's possible to help build that capacity. So in 2008, we added 2 forester positions in response to the huge land acquisition that we had in the timber company divestments. We added another forester on the coast 5 years later for basically the same reason. And we've continued to supplement our staff resources by adding 5 joint burn crews that are funded and staffed through partnerships. The RASP partnership brought 3 additional full-time positions and a whole lot more equipment to the coast. This is that same data. It's just broken down by the acres burned in each region. I thought this was kind of neat because you can see the regional responses directly of the additional resources, which isn't necessarily that surprising. I just think it really demonstrates how we can kind of hedge against regional weather events and other localized events by adding resources across our entire landscape. And the last thing I'll say about this is that doubling our annual acres from 15 to 30,000 acres is a major accomplishment. But our target acres on a 3-year rotation, just within the existing burn units, would be between 60 and 70,000 acres every year. So we've still got a little ways to go to get where we'd really like to be. So where are we with our prescribed burn personnel? We have about 130 staff in land and water that assist in some way with prescribed burning. Of those, we have 10 foresters and 4 assistant foresters that are our most qualified and experienced burn bosses. But a lot of our senior staff, the management biologists, tech supervisors, team leaders are also certified burn bosses. and they conduct a lot of smaller and lower complexity burns across the game lands. We've also added a significant amount of really specialized fire equipment over the last 10 years or so. We beefed up our fire bulldozers. We have 2 Marsh Masters on the coast. We have a 3rd in the budget this year. We also added about a dozen pumper trucks this year with an endowment request. This equipment enables our staff to burn more effectively and more efficiently, and most importantly, safer. So I showed my wife this slide, and she said that absolutely nothing on it looks safe at all to her. But having this newer and more reliable equipment allows us to respond to issues we have on the fire line quickly, which means we're fighting lower intensity and smaller spot fires. The things like flamethrowers, mission guns, and the helicopter help us light fires from a safer location, meaning we can keep folks out of the interior of these big burn units. So let's take a minute to talk about partnerships, because I think this is probably the biggest force multiplier that we have as a program. We are involved in a host of partnerships that directly increase our capacity through both funding and resource sharing. Landscape partnerships like the Sandhills, Onslow Bike, Cape Fear Arch groups have been extremely successful in applying for NIFWIF grants that fund the burn crews, helicopter time, among a lot of other things. The Wild Turkey Federation, the Conservation Corps provided funding, resources for those burning crews as well. We also do a lot of joint burns where we have adjacent properties, the Nature Conservancy, the North Carolina Forest Service, the U.S. Forest Service, to name a few. All of those directly increase the acres that we burn on our program. They help the other agencies increase the acres burned on their program, and they help the entire landscape have more prescribed burning, which is good for everybody. These agencies have also come together to fund and support a lot of new and exciting technology. This is the Fire Weather Intelligence Portal, and it integrates weather data from hundreds of sources across the state into a one-stop shop for fire weather indices that our burners can use for planning purposes. It was developed right here at NC State, and it's housed in the NC State Climate Office just right down the road here on campus. We just did a webinar for our burn bosses and state parks burn bosses, where the state climatologist went through all the latest features and how we can integrate them into our programs. We also just spent a week in Asheville in February with 10 of our agency burn bosses at a course about smoke modeling taught by meteorologists, air quality specialists, fuel specialists, all from the U.S. Forest Service. That training focused on a tool called atmospheric dispersion modeling that basically tries to predict how smoke from a prescribed fire is going to spread downwind. We've been using this type of model for a while, but again, we went over all the new techniques and technologies that will really help us sort of thread the needle when we're planning all of our burns. This is an output from one of those dispersion models that shows what smoke sensitive areas may be downwind and how that smoke plume is going to impact them. So you can really see how this would be useful for planning, making a call on whether or not to burn a particular unit under certain conditions. And some of the training we do, like that smoke model, is very complex. It's geared toward our advanced burners. But also, and I think more importantly, our entry-level employees do trainings that allows them to gain the basic experience that they need for prescribed burning, firefighting. So last year, we assisted state parks with a week-long academy on how to use pumper trucks for initial attack on small fires, like spot overs, which is what those new folks will most likely be doing on a burn. We had 3 instructors from our agency and 9 students at that course, along with about 50 students from a number of other agencies and organizations all across the Southeast. These types of trainings, they don't just increase the experience of our personnel, they provide a lot of team building opportunity within our agency and cross-training opportunities with other agencies, which is really important. Now, I've had the privilege of spending the last 5 days and most of last night on the Yadkin River game lands with 22 of our up-and-coming fire equipment operators. We also had 12 of our really experienced instructors at that training. It was the first agency-hosted heavy equipment operator academy. Now, this thing was a sight. Cody Folk, who's the team leader at our Troy Depot, he worked almost a year with the cooperators at the Uwharrie National Forest to put this thing together. We had 12 bulldozers going across 6 different obstacle courses for 3 full days and 1 night. Those students and instructors gained a tremendous amount of practical experience they're going to take back to their home units. And I can tell you from experience, having a seasoned operator sitting on a D6 that's ready to take care of a spot over gives you a really warm, fuzzy feeling as a burn boss. So for the last few minutes, I want to show you some of the newest, latest, and greatest tools that we're using that are really helping to advance the program. The first is the burn planning feature in our inventory management system. The primary purpose of this system and software was to track and manage our timber inventory. But about 2 years ago, we started using it to track our burn plans and accomplishments. At the beginning of each burning season, every forester enters their planned burn blocks, and then they update them along the way as they burn them and as they're completed. This centralized our burn planning process the same way it did for our timber management. Because we entered all the historic data, also, we can now query all of that information from one location instead of having to go chase it around and pull everybody's burn history locally. That's what I use to make the graphs and everything that we looked at a few minutes ago. And because this information is in a cloud-based system, and this is really cool, it's basically updated in real time, which allows for this. So John Lovett, our one of our GIS specialists, developed this dashboard, which is public facing. Everybody can get on it online. It shows our planned burns on a map, along with the burns that have switched to active on a given day and completed after that. So if you live next to a game land or you just want to see what's going on, you can look at this. You can see what units have been planned near your house. If you want to see what's going on across the street today, you can pull it up. It's all right there. John has also created a similar dashboard for our timber harvest with a lot of similar type information. I would encourage everybody to go take a look at that at some point. It's really cool. So now for the last piece of technology that I want to share with you today. The use of drones is rapidly expanding across a lot of spaces. It's no surprise that we're finding uses for them in prescribed burning. These drones have the ability to drop these same ignition spheres that the helicopter does, which allows us to light significantly larger acreages in a shorter period of time. It also has thermal cameras that allow us to monitor for hot spots during the burn, ground fire for days after it's completed. We purchased our first ignition system, which a lot of you have seen in action in 2019. That drone's getting older and we're phasing it out. Ken Sugar purchased this drone last year and has already burned almost 2,000 acres with it this year in the Southern Coast. Travis Hewitt and Matt O'Connell, who are with us here, Travis is the primary pilot and Matt is his assistant. I guess that makes you Maverick and Goose, right? They were kind enough to bring it up here from Suggs Mill Pond today. Travis was at the bulldozer school with me all week, so he and I both had a long night and a very early morning this morning. But Matt brought it up from Suggs for everybody to see. They'll be around afterwards too if you have any other questions. We're also currently in the process of purchasing a number of smaller drones that have those same thermal cameras that our foresters can use to do the same type of monitoring, as well as several other forestry related practices. So we've worked very hard to bring a lot of new and exciting tools and technology and equipment into this program. But at the end of the day, it all boils down to one of our staff burn bosses literally putting their name on the line on a burn permit and starting a fire. Burning is hard work. It's hot. It's dirty. It doesn't end at 5 o'clock. You're subject to the wind and the weather. I'll tell you what, though, our staff goes out and they do over 100 burns every year, and they keep trying to find ways to do more. So I want to close with just saying thank you to the commission and to the director's office for the support that y'all provide for that very, very important program. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Are there any questions for any commissioners? Great report. Very interesting.
What is the cost of this drone?
Less than a helicopter. It's about $90,000.
Tom, you had your question?
Department of Defense, what is it, what's our association with that? Did I jump in front of somebody?
Go ahead.
I did.
Well, the RASP Recovery and Sustainment Project that's on Holly Shelter, the Bear Garden Tract and Stones Creek Tract, that's a cooperative through the Department of Defense. That's one of the biggest cooperations that we have amongst a few others.
Tom, you had a question? Yeah.
Do y'all have to apply to keep it in side rules?
We do. Yes, sir. So we operate under the Part 107. All of our pilots are Part 107 trained. We actually just went through a training to get, I think there was about 10 or 12 of our potential new pilots through the DOT. They put on a training course in Sanford about a month ago. So yes, sir, we do abide by that. All of our pilots have to have that 107 license.
That's almost like a regular pilot.
The test, there's a lot of, it's a pretty stout test. Yeah.
And did you have a question?
Ego.
Steve.
It's a great job.
Thank
Your people are, there's nothing better than fire. And y'all understand that, and you do it damn well. And I just wanted to say.
Thank you. We have a lot of folks that are really good at it.
Piggyback on what Steve just said, I had the opportunity when you got the first drone to go out to Sand Hill and watch them when they were learning on it. It's pretty wild. They set up a grid system. They're gonna burn, and he flies and runs that grid, and he's dropping those out, and before long you just see flame, following each other around the grid, and I'm sure they've come a long way since then. But they were pretty good at it right after. Like Steve says, we certainly appreciate it. It makes it a lot cost efficient, limited resources. Good investment. Somebody else had another question on this side? Is this thing gasoline or battery powered?
It's battery.
Is the battery on it now?
No, we don't have any batteries. We didn't bring the batteries along with us.
And how long can it fly?
That's about 20 minutes on one pack of batteries. Yes, sir.
55 pounds total gross.
That's with the battery and everything on an additional 55 pounds.
No, not additional, the total gross of the batteries, the dropper and everything, by Part 107 rules, we can't go over 55 pounds gross.
Very good. Thank you.
For our dove fields, have we ever thought about utilizing it to burn the wheat so that it doesn't regerminate, feeds the doves longer?
Yeah, I think we've definitely used it to burn some dove fields already.
Thank you.
Does the machine have a camera on it so you can see if you missed a spot?
Yes, sir.
So you can look down there and say, whoops, we got to go back and hit this one.
Yes, sir. It has both a thermal option and a regular, just dead
Sight count.
Yes, sir.
More questions? Hearing none, Casey?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Felt like fun. Moving on to the agenda, at this time I recognize our Secretary Director, Briggs, consideration of non-game wildlife advisory committee.
Okay, the battery. Probably the battery back. Well, get there. I'm going that right direction. Get there. Okay. You recharge it from your truck or something. We have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Today I'll be presenting Exhibit C, which is filling vacancies on the Non-Game Wildlife Advisory Committee. As discussed in the Habitat, Non-Game and Endangered Species Committee yesterday, we had 10 nominations for the 5 open seats on the committee. And the full list of nominees is located in your exhibit. After careful consideration of the candidates, I recommend reappointment of the following individuals to the committee. Mr. Jeff Bean with North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences, Miss Elaine Jordan of the Coastal Companies, Dr. Mike Martin with the Department of Ag and Consumer Services, and Dr. Joe Poston of Catawba College. And for the last open seat, I recommend appointment of Dr. Ryan Heisey of Duke Energy. Be happy to take any questions.
Questions for any of the nominees? Went over this fairly thorough yesterday. If there are no further questions at this time, I'll entertain a motion to make the appointment as recommended of these 5 seats for non-gaming advisory. Kevin Davis, second. Brad, second. Are there any further comments, or consideration, deliberation? Hearing none, all is in favor of approval of these appointments to the non-gaming advisory committee, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Appointments carried. Approved. Presented. Moving along with rulemaking, this time I'll recognize Corey Oakley, our interim chief of the division chief, to go over permanent rulemaking and notice of text for our 26-27 annual cycle in official rule.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What we have before you today is Exhibit D1 and Exhibit D2 as presented yesterday in the Committee of the Whole. This is request to notice rule text for 18 proposed changes for public comment and presentation at public hearings. And Exhibit D2 is the associated fiscal note for those proposed changes, and staff recommend approval of both Exhibit D1 and D2, Mr. Chairman.
I'll entertain a motion to approve and adopt exhibits D1 and D2 as presented. So, motion Clifton, second presented. Any further discussions on the adoption of D1, D2? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. For now we'll recognize Darren Barnes, permanent rulemaking notice of text and land and water access.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll direct the board to Exhibit E1 and E2. And these are the Land and Water Access Division proposed rule changes for the 2026-2027 rule cycle. Exhibit E1, as it presented yesterday in Committee of the Whole, is a request to notice rule text for 11 proposed changes and put it out for public comment and present it at the public hearing. And of course, E2 is our associated file physical note for the proposed changes, and staff recommend approval of exhibits E1 and E2.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion to adopt approval of E1 and E2 as presented. Tom Haslett, second presented. Any further discussion, deliberation? Hearing none, all those in favor of the adoption of E1 and E2 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Brad Howard, don't gum it up. Let's get going.
Let's keep rolling. The only slowdown's gonna be getting to the,
You know, I'm just picking that stuff.
oh, yes, sir.
You're my readers.
They skipped. We went past for F, didn't we? There we go. No, it's just a matter of getting there. I'll be presenting the wildlife management rules, exhibits F1 and F2. F1 are the proposed rules for notice of text for this cycle for the Wildlife Management Division, and F2 is the associated fiscal note, and staff recommends approval of these as presented in the Cal meeting yesterday.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve F1 and F2. Got a motion? Alexander. Yeah. Any further discussion, deliberation? Not, all those in favor of adoption of F1 and F2 presented, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Brad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next exhibit is Exhibit G1 and G2. Exhibit G1 are the proposed amendments to wildlife captivity and rehabilitation rules as presented yesterday in the Committee of the Whole meeting. And Exhibit G2 is the associated fiscal note. Staff recommends sending both of these two out for public notice and for comment as presented.
This time I entertain a motion. Approval of G1 and G2 is presented by Brad. Ruffin, got a second? Second, stand back. Any further discussion, deliberation? If not, all those in favor of the adoption of G1 or G2 is presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Brad. At this time, we'll call on Will Casola, temporary rulemaking adoption on sea trout. Just beginning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. I have two temporary rule amendments for adoption this morning. We have, our first item is temporary amendments to 15A NCAC 10C 0325 sea trout, exhibits H1 and H2 in your agenda packet. As discussed yesterday, these proposed amendments modify sizing creel limits for sea trout. Second item is temporary amendments to 15A NCAC 10D 0260 Pisgah Game Land. This is exhibits I1 and I2 in your agenda package. As discussed yesterday, the proposed amendments will prohibit activities other than hunting, fishing, trapping, and authorized use of posted trails and parking areas on the lunch track of Pisgah Game Land. At this time, staff recommend adoption of the proposed temporary amendments.
Okay, at this time, I will entertain a motion and second clarification here for the adoption of H1 and I1 as presented. So, Wyndham and Seals. Are there any further discussion or comment? Here none, all those in favor of adoption of I1 and I2 is presented, and I1 is presented, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Now we go on to chairman comments. I'm gonna have a few comments I didn't get to yesterday. We kind of ended the committee of the whole. I think everybody's ready to go home. I'm gonna cover some of the ground there that I didn't get to yesterday afternoon. Coming up June 23rd, you've all received invitations to attend the tour, groundbreaking, and official opening of San McCann Wildlife Law Enforcement Training Facility. It's gonna be a great day, a great morning. It's a legacy event, a legacy facility for this agency, and all of you all and our staff is part of it. I strongly recommend you make every possible to be there. In addition to the dedication of the facility, we're gonna have a rededication of our fallen officers before it was moved from Pisgah to this to the Wildlife Training Center. So we'll have both of those events, color guards, all those wildlife officers will be there. Have got a great lunch plan, tour the facility. For those that want to stay later on after lunch, you can tour the whole facility. But at least plan to be there, 10 to 1, through lunch. Please go ahead and get your invitations. Answer, please, so we have a head count. Also, Commissioner Reed Smith has granted the commission a very generous invitation to attend his farm in conjunction with the December meeting this year, where obviously I mentioned it last night at dinner. It was very well received. It's a very generous offer, and we're looking forward to it. And we'll be working with staff, coordinate how that'll work that day, and we get that information out to you. It's a way, but he's got a beautiful facility there, farm. He's offered his wife, he's offered those. We'll get those details after that. Thank you. Very generous offer. We look forward. Also quickly, one of our own, Tom Berry, was 2025 inductee, if I'm correct, into the Guilford County Sports Hall of Fame. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Recently?
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
acknowledges
Recognition.
prowess and athleticism in high school and University of North Carolina and Chapel Hill. And we offer you congratulations and acknowledgements for that.
Nice of you to mention it. Thank you. I'm very humble and very proud. Thank you.
Also,
you're humble on question. All that for you, my friend. That's scary.
additionally, we had a development with a yak in Alcoa Game Lands, as part of the settlement with the Cube, what's now Cube Hydro Lands, Alcoa Lands, Duke Energy Lands, that we had an opportunity to purchase a great deal of those lands as part of the settlement for the relicense of the dams, where we didn't get it all. We got most of it. I think we ended up with 8,000 or 9,000 acres, but there's 4,700, 4,800 acres. Some of it is still currently enrolled in our game lands program alone. The Yadkin River is being put for sale. It's on the market. They're asking, if you look at it, they've got an itemized, and it's not as it's by parcel. Or yes, that's what it is, by parcel. That's what it's saying. And the prices range up to $75,000 an acre, depending on where the parcel is. A total asking price for the 4,800 acres is $89 million. So when you compare that to what we paid for double that, it was a heck of a deal and would never been accomplished if it wasn't part of the settlement negotiations of the relicense of the dam. They were able to purchase those lands, working with a lot of partners, and raising a lot of money. But we've been able to secure and keep those other lands in the game. What Mark and I have had some extensive conversations, sent the information to Tom as well. And we've directed staff, and Brian and them are actively evaluating all those parcels now with a land trust to identify the ones that are most critical to us. If there are any opportunities there, have to be created out of the box, because we're looking at doing appraisal, take a look at what I think the land actually worth, but it's going on the market, and it's in a critical area, part of our state, right in, right there in the Purchase Piedmont area. We obviously hate to lose any of those game lands. We'll have more information coming through the land next.
Got a lot of hair on the deal.
Pardon?
The numbers are.
Oh, yeah, it's astronomical. I always felt bad about even seeing it tomorrow when I got the numbers. I mean, literally, they're at, like I said, about that. So they're actively evaluating that. We don't know if there's an opportunity here, but we're taking a quick early look to see, is it pass fail, or there's an opportunity for land trades, or opportunities to work with the current property owners. There's just a lot of things we have to think out of the box, those kind of fun to get critically where we want to be. So I just want to give you all the heads up that we're working on getting. Also, we elect the new chair and vice chair by statute every 2 years. That comes up in July. And I know that Mark is going to seek the chairmanship, and he's had conversations with Landon. He is willing to stand as a candidate vice chair. If anybody else is obviously an election, up to the board, but just to let you all know, July, if anybody else wants to put a name in the hat, that's something for you to think about over the next 30 days. So we will address that in the July meeting. Are there any other questions, comments? Anybody else have anything to say? Here none, I'll turn it over now to Bridge Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to just briefly piggyback off of what Dr. Phillips said and thank staff for all of the hard work they do to make sure we're meeting our mission to conserve our wildlife and the habitats all over the state. Also want to especially thank the staff that have worked on the rule proposals that y'all approved to move to public hearing today. It's a lot of work on staff to get these rules, refine these rules, and try to make them so that it works for not only the wildlife, but for our constituents. Want to thank all commissioners for all of their support, advice, and guidance that they provide, especially all the hours I'll put in outside of the meetings that nobody ever sees. And lastly, one other announcement, since our meeting in July is so late, I want to just make sure, put it on everybody's radar that our law enforcement recruit school graduation will be August 1st. That'll be at Pinehurst First Baptist Church, and there will be an email coming out, an invite coming out before long, but just wanted to go ahead and get that on. That's all I have.
Are there any other comments, questions, anything from commissioners in the wild business? Here none, meeting adjourned.